Hi, my name's Pete Swiderski. Today I'd like to give a saxophone lesson on vibrato. Vibrato is that wavy sound that you hear instruments and vocalists playing. Let me demonstrate for you. Now if I do that same thing without the vibrato, you can hear the difference. A straight sound. Now some instruments naturally play with straight tones, like percussion instruments, piano. A lot of times clarinets play with straight sounds, but most instruments use the vibrato. So let's talk about how to use a vibrato. There are several ways to do it on the saxophone, and one that I think most people agree is the best way. One way to do it is with kind of a diaphragm vibrato, where you kind of push air off and on or in and out of your instrument like this. Kind of a pulsing vibrato. And it would sound something like this. This would be a little more common with a flute or an oboe. On the saxophone, we don't use that one as much. Other vibratos that you have are kind of this throat vibrato, which I'm not even going to attempt to demonstrate. But the one that the saxophone uses most commonly is a jaw vibrato. A jaw vibrato is where you're very slightly moving your jaw up and down. When I do it, I like to think of the syllable ya. So I'm going like this. Ya, 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 ya. A good way to start this is to put your metronome on 60. Let's do that now. Here's the metronome at 60. Now what I'm going to try to do is go ya, 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 ya. I'm going to pulse 16th notes at 60. I'm going to start with G. You could start with any note, but typically if you start in the middle of your horn, it works better. If it's working well, go up to the next note. Now you'll discover that different vibrato feels different in the high register from the low register. The high register will take a little more narrow vibrato, and the low register a little more wide vibrato. Now a couple things that can go wrong with the vibrato. First, it can get going too fast and too narrow. I call this the whinny vibrato, kind of like where your jaw tends to just vibrate really fast, something like this. It doesn't sound good, it's not pleasant, it wouldn't work well. The other vibrato is too wide. Usually when a vibrato is too wide, it's also way too slow. Too wide to be something like this. These are all uncharacteristic and undesirable sounds for today's music. Even the classical music or jazz music, vibratos tend to be a little faster than that and not as fast as that whinny vibrato. Now as far as speeds, a good vibrato tends to range about, if you were to measure it in 16th notes, somewhere in the neighborhood of 70, low 70s to high 80s, even as high as 90 sometimes. But that would be a desirable vibrato. Now, to practice the vibrato, you're going to start with the 16th notes at 60 on the metronome until they're very, very even. And then slowly increase the speed of the metronome till you get probably to at least 70. That would be the desirable one to go at. So if I put it at 70, here's 70 sixteenths. And that's a pretty decent workable vibrato. Now in classical music, or all sorts of classical baroque, anything but the jazz and rock styles, typically the vibrato will start at the exact same moment a note starts. You don't want to wait and then start it and warm it up like you would like on maybe some jazz things or a Broadway or a pop song. So if I were playing a classical song, I would start the vibrato at the moment my note starts. If I were doing, say, a jazz ballad, I might want to start and hesitate on the vibrato and then warm it up just a little bit, like this. So in that case, I waited, and then I started the vibrato, and then I sped it up just a little bit towards the end there. There are all sorts of ways and nuances that you can put on your vibrato, different things you can do for different characteristic styles. And they're all good. Your ear will tell you when it's wrong or right, but in general, on the classical stuff, the vibrato starts right with a note. A couple of other important things on the vibrato. The vibrato is independent of your tongue. So you can tongue notes and have vibrato going, or you can slur notes and have vibrato going. Now, I don't want to mislead you into thinking that there are a certain number of 16th notes in every beat on vibrato. That's not necessarily true. That's just one way to start it. If a song is really, really slow, there are going to be more pulsations in a whole note than if a song were really, really fast. But they always work out to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 90 pulses if you're going and measuring in 16th notes. And one last way you can do this is instead of playing, setting your metronome at 60 and doing 16th notes, you could set it slightly faster, say 70, and do triplets. And then you're not always thinking 16th notes. And then, of course, you would go faster. Here's 86. Now, if you listen carefully on that last demonstration, the first ones I was slurring, but still doing vibrato, and then the second ones I started to tongue and attack each note, but still doing the vibrato. A good vibrato, I'd say, takes 2 to 3 weeks to develop a good usable vibrato. It takes time to get your jaw muscle going up and down at a very even rate. Explore playing low and high because they'll both sound different. The vibrato will change. Good luck with your vibrato. Listen to lots of people playing all styles of music and you'll get a good idea of how an acceptable vibrato sounds. Thanks.